This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. Here, we explore the taboo, less obvious, and paradoxical aspects of society. Questions that need nuanced answers, not just Google results. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to make a more curious future for everyone. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. This is a remastered gem about something happening to kids that we've really only been talking about in the mainstream since Paris Hilton's documentary in 2020. It's the troubled teen industry. My guest shares how his parents, in response to his out-of-control behavior, instead of sending him to tennis camp, they sent him to a nightmarish WWASP teen rehab center in Mexico, where he served an indefinite sentence. You'll hear how this was really the beginning of a cycle of abuse, imprisonment, and bad decisions, but not the end of his life. He tells how he sifted identity from trauma and what gave him the hope to keep going. It's an important episode for anyone weighing options for their out-of-control teenager, and a healing episode for anyone who's trying to shift from surviving to thriving. If you end up liking this one, you'll also like the one I did with a woman who survived a serial killer. That's episode 189. All right, friends, keep it curious. Prisoner in a nightmarish teen rehab center. Felon. Law student. Sex abuse victim. Los Angeles resident. Business owner. Are these things experiences or identities? How do we separate the entirety of our person from our experiences, good and bad? That's what we will discuss with my next guest. He spent his teen years in 9 different facilities and boot camps around the world, some of which are now closed due to severe child abuse, rape, and torture. He has spent his adult years as a successful business owner and redesigning his identity. Enduring entrepreneur, peace seeker, 31 and the best is yet to come, Rocky Kandola.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, Meredith.
I'm so glad that we met. I'm so glad that you reached out to me. And your story, like I said, is you ain't boring, son. You ain't boring. And I love how I'm just so impressed by how much joy that you have and how willing you are to face the darkest corners of your personal experiences head on. Like it totally inspires me.
That's the goal, right? Just with everything we've been through in our past, we have the opportunity to inspire, motivate others. Using what we've been through, that's a blessing in itself.
It is. And for you, so much of your story centers around these teen rehab centers, rehab with air quotes, that were really abuse in the name of treatment, especially the WWASP ones. As you know, your story unfolds, people will want to know this. So we'll just start with this question. What was it that caused your parents to decide that you needed to go there? Because obviously they didn't know that it was bad. So what was the motivating factor there?
So my parents were kind of traditional Indian parents growing up, and they wanted their kids to stay home, to study, to be, head first into the books. And which, I was a very smart kid growing up. I always had good grades, but I always talked back to my teachers and my parents, and I wanted to be out and about, and I didn't want to stay inside. I wanted to go play tennis, to go run around the neighborhood, to play hide and go seek. And my parents really didn't like these things. They really wanted me at home studying. And the older I got, the more I wanted to do, and the less they wanted me to do. So, at an early age, my dad taught me how to drive. At 11 years old, I think 12, I looked like a 15 or 16-year-old. So he kind of, was like, okay, let me give him a shot. And that quickly led into me sneaking his car out at night. In the middle of the night, I'd put it in neutral, roll it down the driveway, and then just go for a joyride or Taco Bell and Crystals and pick up friends and get food. And one of those nights, unfortunately, I was pulled over by the police in my local small hometown. And the police knew my parents, actually, so they called them. And instead of going to tennis camp in Louisiana the next day, the Nike tennis camps, I was actually headed off towards my first, quote unquote, rehab facility in Ensenada, Mexico, Baja California, called Casa by the Sea by the Worldwide Association of Specialty Programs. And that was the beginning of a 6-year journey between boot camps and schools and military schools and boarding schools, starting at around 11, 12 years old.
I don't think people know what these centers are. I had to look it up. And so can you describe the scene for what those WWASP centers look like, or at least the one in Mexico, and kind of what the normal treatment is there?
These are global for-profit businesses that operate all across the world. They have a variety of different legal factors and manipulations that they kind of put into their marketing plans in order to entice families who have troubled teens or troubled families to be able to get their family back and get their kids back and save their lives. They market to parents saying, they're the best doctors, the best food, the best care, the best education, none of which could be farther from the truth. All of it is basically outright lie. There's no set studying there. There's no counselor beyond, once a month here and there meeting if you're acting up type of thing. And the counselors that they do bring in are basic, just people looking to diagnose kids with, the DSM tests and things like that. The structure of the schools is very intense. It's very brainwashing oriented, very abuse as far as, verbal as well as physical and obviously sexual, all the whole gamut basically. When you first walk into facilities, if you're escorted by an escort, which I was escorted later in life, where you get kidnapped in the middle of the night, your hands cuffed, your ankles cuffed, and you get escorted across the country to one of these schools, you're already kind of in a trauma shock mode as soon as you get woken up in the middle of the night. My first time I was brought with my parents, my mom actually, as soon as you leave, the site of your mom, which for me, I actually got to go back to the school and see that this weekend. There's one room where you're with your family, and then as soon as you walk past the door, it's like the lights change, the lights go darker, the halls get dirty, they start cursing at you, screaming at you, pushing you, grabbing you, cutting your hair off, taking your clothes off, telling you that you won't be leaving anytime soon, that you don't need any of your things, and that you won't be talking to anybody, so get used to it. Your first 10 days, you're sleeping in a hallway. All night long, you hear kids screaming and crying from the various punishment rooms, from their bedrooms, from all different kind of areas in the facility. Throughout the night, you're woken up at 2 o'clock, at 4 o'clock in the morning to go outside in the cold and the rain and count down. Any kind of looking out of line, standing up or sitting down without permission, talking without permission is dealt with very strictly, from physical all the way to punishments that, are made to kind of break a person, which is sitting on the last 4 inches of the chair and listening to audio tapes and writing it down all day long, until the next level of punishment, where if you mess up in there, you get put in a room, hands and feet tied behind your back, stomach on the ground, chin on the ground, facing a wall with possibly a guy sitting on top of you for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even longer days than that, depending on how bad they want to punish you. Schooling there is just done by reading a textbook and taking a test at the end of the chapter. The entire day is regimented and strict. You don't get any communication with your peers, nor with the outside world. Any kind of, like I said before, any kind of like variance from the rules as far as looking out of line, sitting up or standing down without permission is dealt with very strict. If you want to go to the restroom, there's only 1 4-hour break. Every 4 hours you can go. If you want to go before that, you have to take what's called a consequence, which is an infraction of the rules, which one consequence gets you basically an extra couple of days added onto an indefinite sentence at this place. But what they used to tell us is that I was 12. When you turn 18, if you don't graduate by the time you're 18, you're going to get $50 and a bus pass, and you're going to get put on the border of Mexico and U.S. and be told to live your life because your parents will never take you back, and they don't want you, and they know you're manipulating them, and they don't want anything to do with you. Oh my God. So it's a huge mind trip and brainwash game for especially at that age.
And mental torture. And at a time where you are developing some important developmental milestones, or at least you're supposed to. So I can't imagine how that interrupted your development as a young man.
I read a quote maybe a week ago on one of our Facebook groups where they were like, you don't want to make yourself a victim, but if you feel like the other people around you in your age group did have an advantage, like, or you're not, it's not valid, because, while they were, worrying about how to fit in and how to get past school, you were basically at a point where you're just worrying how to survive. And that really resonated with me, because I remember back then thinking that, like, okay, Rocky, like, you're in this now, like, you need to not die. You need to make it out of this. You need to somehow figure out what else could be out there in life. Just don't die. Don't give up. Don't give in. Try to get past this. And I remember that was actually a pretty big pattern in my life. Moving forward after that, I literally would just look for how to survive. For me, learning how to live came much later, after I put myself through other things at a later age in life, was when I realized, okay, you know what, maybe I should shift from just trying to make it and survival mode, to actually living life how I want to live and creating something beautiful for myself.
So it's almost like, instead of your identity being, I'm going to live, like you said, or I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, your whole identity was just a mantra to not die. Survive,
make it through this as good as I could. I think at that age, I didn't know that I was being mentally abused, really.
Mhm.
Physically, it was kind of obvious. Sexually, it was obvious. But mentally, I was just like, these thoughts are in my brain. I can't go crazy. I just need to make sure that, I'm okay enough to be able to get out. And it was normal. Even to this day, when people tell me, like, hey, I've never heard of these places, I had to look it up. It shocks me because I'm like, wow, like my brain, it was all normal. It was
Right.
like, this is something that, one out of every few kids has to go through. And that's just what it is. And I think that's why it's more important, so important that we're sharing and talking and people, even like Paris Hilton, are able to shed light upon these topics now because, there's how many kids are out there that just feel like this is normal. This is what they're supposed to go through. This is what life is. And how does that direct the future of their thoughts and their communities and how they act and behave in those communities as well? So it's very, very far reaching consequences when you really think about it.
When did Paris Hilton talk about it?
She just did a documentary called This Is Me the last month or so. The documentary is on Netflix now. It's called This Is Me. She went to a school called Provo Canyon in Utah. Very similar regimented program, except it's in the U.S. So the ones outside of the U.S. are thought to be more of the crazier ones because they kind of operate outside of the U.S. laws a little bit anyway. But the ones in the U.S. are still horrible, crazy, and the allegations of abuse and sexual trauma and stuff that the kids face there are equal, if not sometimes greater than the ones that I went through at my boot camp.
Wow, that's crazy. So how did you switch from just survive, just survive, just survive, and that was your identity, is just like an animal surviving? How did you switch that to now I'm going to live and I'm going to create and do?
Well, I kind of took that well into my adult years. I mean, when I was finally released from my last program and on the border of Canada and New York, I was ready to live. And when for me at that age, living meant literally going against every authority figure and every kind of rule of society that there was, which ended up being equaling out to me selling drugs, partying, women, that kind of lifestyle, just 24/7, which is an identity of itself and it's living in a certain sense, but it's not really, in my opinion, now as I've grown up, not really what we can do with our lives as far as I believe that part of the definition of life being is being able to share and give because you can't really take anything with you when you leave. And it really measures your life. It measures your life based on what you're able to give and share with the world versus what you're able to take in and keep. So, that really didn't change for me until after I was out of prison, after I went crazy into drugs and alcohol and partying and selling and doing drugs until one day after prison, when I started getting back in the same lifestyle, that something kind of came into me, a higher power, an energy, something within myself that was coming from a place of greater good. Just said, hey, Rocky, like, why don't you let all this behind? Why don't you leave this identity that you want to get and create for yourself, the circles you have, the girlfriends you have, the dope dealing type of things, and just let go of it and see what else is out there. And that was, I think, 2012 or 13. And I just left and went to India and left everything I knew behind and started a new life and clean living. And that was 6 or 7 years ago. And it's been a heck of a journey up and down, left and right, tears, blood, injuries, off and on with a little bit of drugs as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I finally came to a place now, like where I am creating my life. I am living how I want to live. I'm sharing. I'm doing podcasts like this. I'm working really hard on my business. I'm helping out others in every way I possibly can. I'm able to take my family and my parents on trips now and reconnect with them. And we still argue here and there a little bit and talk about the past, but it's in a very loving and grown up sense that I honestly never thought was possible. I told myself that my parents are just going to pass away, or maybe I will first, or whoever does, but this will never get dealt with. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's like resolved check mark type of thing yet. I think healing and that type of growth is more of like a dance and a learning process versus just a linear, type of race. So it's still a constant daily type of thing. But 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even, I would have never said that I could be where I am internally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, anything. And equally as important, business wise, I just thought that who I was that dope boy party kid that would always have to hustle on doing different things to try to make ends meet enough to do what you wanted to do. And I realize now that I'm living, beyond my wildest dreams as far as all that.
Oh, totally. And there's like this pattern of hope throughout your story. I love how you say that it's a dance, because I feel like that's super accurate when it comes to our mental health, when it comes to recovery from trauma, when it comes to even relationships. It's not linear. It's not like, okay, I ticked the box and then I'm moving forward. It's definitely wiggles and squiggles on the paper and not like going down the checklist. And so just to kind of make the timeline make sense, because you mentioned a couple things there. So after you got out of the center in Mexico, you were back for a while, but then you were sent to another boarding school, kidnapped, and there your main abuser, Jason Finlayson. I would say his name because I've heard you say his name, and so I feel like that's important. And I Googled him, and I feel like it's important as a side note for other parents who have troubled teens and are looking for solutions. They need these resources to be able that are searchable by name, because a lot of these folks and a lot of these facilities, they change their names, and that really makes it hard to figure out what some genuine options are for truly troubled teens that need that. But when you got to that other facility, so went from Mexico, Pascagoula, back up to the New York, Canada border, he's there. And so that must have been just a gut punch to be like, your abuser in Mexico is now on the other side of the country staring you down again. What did you think about that helped you hold on for hope for better days during that time?
Yeah. So after I got out of Mexico, I went to like 3 or 4 different small facilities. Like my pattern in my life became 6 months home, 6 months away. So I went to like military schools, Catholic boarding schools, and a public school and a private school in between there. Finally, once again, I was in trouble with the law for having alcohol in my car and got sent to the one you're speaking of now. And that was one of the craziest experiences I've ever had. I remember coming home late at night and seeing my dad on the couch and knowing something was wrong. I remember putting a desk in front of my door, putting a knife under my bed, putting my dog in my room and being scared. And I remember waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning with my ankles cuffed and my hands cuffed, wondering how they got past all the security that I put in there and cuffed me. And I remember seeing my parents' eyes through my door peeking, like looking at me. And I was like, I remember being calm because I knew it was going to happen already. I remember not freaking out, not wanting to run or anything. I was like, dang, here we go again. And the escorts actually told me on the way to New York on the ride up that, hey, because I was talking about Jason Finlayson, they were like, oh, wow, he's running this facility here now.
Oh my God.
And I was so nervous from the entire inside. I don't think I showed it on the outside. I think at this point I'd been institutionalized enough to understand like how to show my self and how to act and how to, look calm on the outside. But I was going crazy on the inside. And when I finally got there first, he had the nerve to come out and like has the same like, hey, boy, like the same little voice he has, like, dude, like I remember his voice. And I remember for the first like maybe minute or two at the very least, I just wanted to grab a pen, anything I could to just hurt this guy as bad as I could. And from 12 to 17, I was a big kid. I was pretty much as big as I am now, 17. So they knew and I knew that's not what it was when I was a kid anymore. I will hurt you. And I really wanted to. And I don't know. I think part of my like institutional type of thing kicked in, and I was like, Rocky, like, what do you got to do to get out of here? What do you have to do now? You've worked this program. You've worked 5 other programs in between. Let's get out of here. And after I kind of like he talked to me a little bit right in front of the whole group. He wouldn't let me be alone with him. I didn't really see him that much after that because he was an admin at a higher level there. I was like dealing with lower level, admin people at that time. Yeah, it was. I really wanted just to hurt him. I don't know how to say it better than that. I had a couple other run-ins with him throughout my time there. One time there was this kid leaving and he wrote in his journal and like told him, do good. We encouraging you, like stay out of here, listen to your parents and do good when you get home. And he came into our classroom, found that journal and took away all of our points and put us like level 1, 0 points because, they don't get paid to get you out of there fast. They get paid to keep you in that program. And that was a time when he actually tried to touch me again and I flipped out. I don't know if I pushed him or what I did, but he basically, I let him know that you're not going to just grab me and kick me right now. And I didn't get any physical abuse. They tried to grab me and this and that. And I pushed him off me. I was able to get him off me. They had 2, 3 guys come in. Once I saw 3 of them come in, I put my hands up and I was like, don't worry, I'll get on the ground myself. Just don't touch me.
It's okay.
And that's what it was there. And, I was able to finagle my way through that program the second time. And I knew what to say. I knew what to do. And it still took me 7, 8 months to get out finally. And the time when I got out of there, I was finished with high school. I got a fake diploma because this school was incredible. And they were giving out fake diplomas. It's called Academy at Ivy Ridge in New York. But my parents saw that I graduated, got my diploma. I was about maybe 6 months away from 18, and they decided to go ahead and pull me out of the program. I remember Jason Finlayson being at the seminar that day, trying to convince them and me to not pull me out again. And you're going to ruin their life again. And don't do it. And I just told my parents, I was like, I told you guys everything about this person. I told you everything that happened. I think I should leave. I think you should get me out of here. Make the decision. And they didn't make it that night. I had to sleep the whole next day. The next day, when the seminar was supposed to be over, I finally told me, like, oh, Rocky, you're getting pulled out today. Yeah, they do it like that because they don't want you to talk to other kids. They want other kids to know. They're not allowed to trade information with people. So writing in that journal was like a run plan consequence because we could have wrote plans for escape, in there. It was a very, very weird vibe and very manipulative type of feeling. And as an adult, I say an adult, but at 17, I felt pretty old. Looking at all this stuff, it broke my heart to see the kids that were there at 12 when I was there at 12, and that I couldn't do anything to get them out. And that I couldn't, because there was one kid that was there simply facing a child custody battle with his parents, and like they left him there. And I was just like, man, this is horrible. Like, I hope you get out soon. And I went back to that school also as an adult and saw just how it looked. I wasn't as brave then because I had my now ex-wife with me. I didn't want to get her in trouble. And I kind of walked around the border of the school and kind of peeked in, but I didn't, kind of break into school like I did this last weekend in Mexico. So it's just because it's in the U.S. doesn't mean it's not as manipulative, not as abusive, or not as crazy. It was very crazy. I think I was just at an older age and a larger, body to be able to deal with it better at that age. But there's kids that are, as we speak right now in these facilities across the world, anywhere from 11 to 17 years of age.
Hey, Curiositors, just a quick pause to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. From time to time, I recommend other podcasts you might like. And here's one I know that you're going to love. It's the Jordan Harbinger Show. I love it because it's smart without being too highbrow and 1,000% ADD friendly. I know, you love it already. I'm a genuine true fan. When I have time to listen to podcasts just for pleasure, not, guest research, the Jordan Harbinger Show is my automatic choice. It's like when you're hungry and someone asks you what you want, and then before you even have a minute to think about it, you find yourself at Chick-fil-A because, obviously, Jordan's the Chick-fil-A of podcasts. Some of my favorites include the one with the man held hostage by Somali pirates, that's episode 115, and the pain psychologist about how pain lives in the brain, not in the body, episode 661. You can't go wrong with adding the Jordan Harbinger Show to your rotation. It's incredibly interesting and there's never a dull show. Search for the Jordan Harbinger Show, that's HARB as in boy, IN as in Nancy, GER, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This episode is also brought to you by INSEC. I don't just recommend them because they've been such a huge support of the show since day one. Their approach to pest control just puts my mind at ease. Their management plans are based on proper pest identification, not just blasting everything. With an emphasis on avoiding non-target species. One of the owners is a beekeeper, so pollinator respect is always top of mind. They take time to ask the right questions and their work is guaranteed. But don't wait till the last minute to get on their schedule. If you're in the Florida Panhandle or Gulf Coast of Alabama, give them a call, enscc.net. This episode is also supported by the UWF Historic Trust. Listen, a lot of you come to Florida for vacation and there's something you need to know. Sometimes it rains here, and sometimes you tourists use spray sunscreen and fry yourselves on the first day. So don't plan your Pensacola trip without also getting tickets to the UWF Historic Trust. It's good for a whole week and it's a great indoor activity option. You'll recognize Trader John's where I record the show in the Pensacola Museum of History. Get your tickets in person so you can show an agent one of my emails and get $2 off an adult ticket. Visit historicpensacola.org. Now back to the show. Remember to stay till the end where I give you a sneak peek of next week's episode. Yeah. And you said you adapted your behavior, you controlled your reactions, and then, as you alluded to earlier, you later spent some time in prison, not in a rehab camp, but prison, on a drug charge. A lot of former felons and probably, I would dare to say, former kids that were in these rehab centers are challenged to shake off these habits and mindsets and outlooks that they had to survive, and they have trouble like transitioning into whatever normal is. Do you find that you personally are discovering any outlooks, mannerisms, or habits that you had from either the prison camps or the prison itself?
For me, the biggest thing is trust. To have your trust like snatched away at that young of age and then have it repeatedly snatched away. That's been the hardest thing. I mean, I'm talking about from my personal relationships to my family to even my business. Trust is huge for me. It's so hard for me to just actually trust a person, a process, a system, anything. And the crazy part is, like, as you said, from an adult point of view, these prisons, they want you to like shed those old habits, those old ways of thinking. What do they replace that with? What are they teaching you to replace that with? What are they giving you an option for? And if you give someone that has survived and has not perished because he had these systems and these mindsets in place, to tell them don't use them anymore, throw them away, and then not give them a proper, viable alternative and teach that to them and talk with them about it is just like saying, hey, throw up your hands. You might die, you might not, but just try this way. It just doesn't work. You have to really teach someone and show them and spend time talking and listening, understanding if you really want to let them let go of those habits and those mind frames and those thoughts. For me, it was just a constant battle, until finally I started putting the right information in my ears, listening to podcasts like Wayne Dyer, Ralph Smart, Joe Dispenza, Tim Ferriss, people like this that had been through some of it and that spoke on it, to really put that in my life, where I started understanding, like, what, there are different ways to think. There are different habits and systems I can instill within myself that are very positive that will get me to the places I want, versus just my mentality of, survive, of don't trust, of fight or flight, which, was very prevalent, I think, in anybody that goes through these type of things. Fight or flight is huge. We have these two responses. And when we get triggered or scared or worried, we pick one or the other and 100% go with it. And then to slow down and to really understand that there's other options, there's other ways, there's other mindsets we can instill. It takes a lot of knowing yourself, calming down, breathing, putting positive information into you, and then having that positive information validated and reaffirmed as you try it and practice it and kind of basically work it out. That's the process that eventually leads towards actually changing your state of mind and your frame of mind and doing something different and better with your life.
And it is a practice and it's an experiment. And it's like, and I just did an episode about this, about what worked yesterday might not work today. And it's just like that continual, okay, we're going to get up, we're going to try something new. So it almost seems like, if anything, your experience of getting physically knocked down, emotionally, mentally, everything, and then you're a get back upper, like you get back up, and now that's become a part of your personal process, which is so incredible. And now you have several successful businesses. How do you stay motivated now with the mental load of trying to work through this trauma and trying to grow a business at the same time? What keeps you going every day?
It's a good question, and it's a tough one. I mean, to as an adult, to not have talked about this as a kid and not really have processed it properly and went through it, to want to do it now. People would say, like my family, like, you're crazy. Like, what are you doing? You're doing good now. Just leave it alone. And I like to think of myself as preparing for the future. I know that this stuff is in me. I noticed that even as I've been doing well in my life and in my business, that certain relationships and certain things will come up and I'll trigger back to those times in the past. And I don't want to have that anymore. I want to work through it and understand it and learn why I think like that automatically and grow from it. And in my opinion, this is the only way to do it, is to face it head on, to understand it, to talk about it, to really dive into it, and then share that with others as well, because that's where the real meaning comes out of it for me. I really believe that everything happens for a reason. And I believe, and I know now, that the reason I went through those things was to help share that with other people, to share that story, to share that experience and that hope. Even as a kid from a good family and a well-off father that was a physician, these things can happen. This trauma, this mental instability, mental abuse, even mental issues, don't distinguish between socioeconomic classes, races, genders, or anything. Anybody can be hurt and hit by it, and the more we talk about it, the more it's public, the better we can do learning about it and shedding light on it.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I love that your motivation for keeping going is prepping for the future. I think that's so perfect. So as we wrap up today, I feel like our time has just flown by, but what advice would you give to those who are trying to overcome trauma and sift truth from fiction when it comes to their experiences and their identity?
I would say, firstly, quiet your mind and rid yourself of any distractions around you, from music to television to people, even to, if you're putting garbage in your body, just give yourself a couple weeks a break from all that. Feed yourself good, feed yourself positivity in your ears and your eyes, your nose, your mouth, and everything. and then start finding someone to talk about it with. If you can't find a person, write it down. That's what I started doing. That's how I'm actually writing my book now, is 'cause I started writing it as a journal. And then I realized if I want to share this, I can actually share this in a book form also. But it's really important to get it off if you get it off your chest. I think many times for women, it's a little bit easier. And for men, society tells us we're not allowed to talk about this stuff. It's, don't say anything, hush, hush. And that's horrible. We should definitely, women and men, all people alike, should be able to talk about these things that were heavy on our hearts, that causes trauma. And the third, I think, face your fears. Everything that you talk about, everything you're scared of, once you start doing it, once you get another end of it, it's really not as scary as you thought it was. It's just scary leading up to it. Most of these things that we're afraid of, once we do them, we realize how small they really are, and we, move on to the next step. So yeah, it's disconnecting, ridding yourself of the distractions, finding a good person or a good book to write in and talk about these issues, facing your fears with it. And then, eventually, if you want to follow my footsteps, is sharing it, because the more we all have been through this stuff, the more we all share about it, the more people grow, the more people learn, the less it happens, in the future, the more the younger generation can learn from our experiences versus having to, go down that deep hole themselves and possibly, have a lot of consequences personally from it, as well as for our communities as a whole and the world as a whole from it.
That is so good. Rocky, when you do come out with that book, it's going to be so good. It's going to be so, so good. I am so grateful that we met, and I can't wait to introduce. I can't wait for everyone to just, in a way, meet you. So if they want to follow you on social media and keep up with your many, many, many endeavors, how can they do that?
So my personal blog is rockykandola.com. It's just ROCKYKANDOLA.com. And all my businesses, from my rental agency, my tea company, and my hair company, there's links to it all on that website as well. The rental company is Rocky's Rentals, the tea company is Manali Tea Co., and the hair company is Hair Made in India. So you can Google it. We're on all social media. We're very active. So yeah, come follow us. The blog's on there where I put all the stories of the past as well on there too.
Awesome. Thank you again, my friend. That's a wrap. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the one I did with the woman who survived a serial killer. That's episode 189. Stay tuned next week when I talk with an Arctic explorer about an expedition gone wrong. Until then, keep it curious.